You text someone you care about. You wait for a response. 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, nothing. They've seen your messages, but they've chosen silence. And somewhere inside, you're left wondering, did I do something wrong? Will they ever explain? The worst part isn't the rejection. It's the uncertainty. But here's what most people don't realize. The person ghosting you isn't cruel. They're terrified. When someone disappears without explanation, they're not doing it to you. They're doing it because of something broken inside them, something rooted in how their brain is wired to handle conflict, rejection, and shame. And understanding this changes everything about how you respond, how you heal, and how you protect yourself in the future. This is day 3 of 30 Days of Psychology Secrets. Today we're exploring the hidden psychological reason people ghost you, and more importantly, what that tells you about them. Let's start with a question that most people never ask. What makes someone choose silence over honesty? The answer isn't indifference. It's actually the opposite. Most people assume ghosting happens because the other person doesn't care. They're wrong. Ghosting typically happens because someone cares too much about how they're perceived, and they're paralyzed by the fear of being seen as a bad person. Think about it this way. Imagine you need to tell someone something that will hurt them. Maybe you're not interested anymore. Maybe you've changed your mind. Maybe you're scared they'll hate you. Your brain immediately faces a choice. Have a difficult conversation and risk rejection, or simply disappear and avoid the confrontation entirely. For most people, that choice is obvious. Avoidance wins, but why does our brain prefer avoidance over honesty? It comes down to something psychologists call emotional regulation. Essentially, how well you can handle your own uncomfortable feelings. Here's the mechanism. When someone realizes they need to hurt you, their brain predicts emotional pain. Not your pain, their pain. The discomfort of seeing your face fall. The guilt of knowing they caused it. The fear that you'll respond with anger, tears, or words they can't take back. Their brain perceives this as a threat and it activates an ancient survival response. Escape. Ghosting isn't a decision. It's a reflex. Now add one more layer. In the digital age, ghosting feels safer than it ever has. There's no face-to-face confrontation. There's no real-time emotional reaction to witness. The other person can pretend you simply don't exist. They can rationalize it. They can avoid the mirror of your pain. But the psychology goes even deeper than avoidance. Consider attachment theory, the framework that explains how your childhood relationships shape how you connect with others as an adult. Some people develop what psychologists call avoidant attachment. These people learned early that relationships were unreliable or that showing vulnerability was dangerous. So they developed a protective strategy: keep people at a distance. Never fully commit. Exit quickly before you can be hurt first. For someone with avoidant attachment, ghosting isn't cruelty. It's survival. They don't feel like they're disappearing on a person they cared about. They feel like they're protecting themselves from inevitable abandonment. It's a preemptive strike against their own fear. But there's another psychological mechanism at work too. Cognitive dissonance. This is the mental discomfort you feel when you hold two contradictory beliefs. A ghoster often believes two things simultaneously. I'm a good person, and I'm hurting someone by disappearing. These beliefs can't coexist comfortably in their mind. So their brain finds a solution. Simply deny one of them. They tell themselves they'll get over it. They probably already know why I'm leaving. They don't really care. It's not that serious. A clean break is actually kinder. These rationalizations reduce the cognitive dissonance. They allow the ghoster to preserve their self-image as a decent human being while simultaneously doing something indecent. Here's where it gets interesting from a neurological perspective. When someone is faced with the need to have a difficult conversation, a specific region of their brain activates, the prefrontal cortex, which handles reasoning and impulse control. But at the same time, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is screaming that this conversation is dangerous. The conflict between these systems creates paralysis. For people with low emotional regulation skills, or for those who've never learned how to have difficult conversations, that paralysis wins. It's not that they choose to ghost. It's that they cannot tolerate the anxiety of confrontation, and their brain hijacks the decision-making process before conscious thought even. Arrive's research in social psychology also suggests something called distancing theory, the tendency to emotionally disconnect from someone when we perceive them as a threat to our self-image. Once your ghoster decides they're going to disappoint you, they unconsciously start diminishing your importance in their mind. They tell themselves you didn't mean that much anyway. This makes disappearing feel justified. Now let me give you some real-world context. A woman named Sarah spent 4 months texting someone. They had deep conversations. He said things like, "I've never met anyone like you." Then one day, nothing. She replayed every conversation, convinced she'd said something wrong. She questioned her entire personality. She felt rejected in a way that cut deeper than a simple breakup. Why? Because ghosting removes the closure that explicit rejection provides. When someone tells you it's not working, you have information. It hurts, but you can process it. Ghosting, by contrast, leaves your brain in a state of unresolved tension. The Zeigarnik effect, a psychological principle that says, your brain remembers incomplete tasks. Better than completed ones means you'll obsess over this more than if they'd simply said no. Your brain wants closure. Ghosting denies you that. In another case, a guy named Marcus was ghosted by someone he genuinely loved. He was devastated, but what surprised him most was the response he got when he finally reached out to ask why. "I didn't know how to explain. I thought disappearing would hurt you less." This is the tragic irony. The ghoster's attempt to minimize your pain actually maximizes it. So what does all this mean for you? First, understand that ghosting reflects the ghoster's psychological limitations, not your worth. Someone who cannot handle a difficult conversation is someone who has never developed emotional maturity. That's not your responsibility to fix, and it's not a reflection on you. Second, recognize the patterns. If you're repeatedly being ghosted, it might be worth asking, am I attracting people with avoidant attachment? Am I moving too fast? Am I ignoring red flags about emotional availability? Not because it's your fault, but because understanding your own role helps you make different choices. Third, protect your own attachment style. Notice how you respond to silence. Do you immediately panic? Do you blame yourself? Do you wait indefinitely for an explanation? Your response pattern matters. If you find yourself becoming anxious or obsessive after being ghosted, consider that this might be your own attachment wound surfacing, and that's worth exploring. Fourth, practice early communication. In the early stages of any relationship, pay attention to how someone communicates during small conflicts. Do they disappear? Do they get defensive? Do they actually talk? These are signals about how they'll behave when stakes are higher. And fifth, and this is important, if you find yourself wanting to ghost someone, pause. Ask yourself what you're actually afraid of. Discomfort, judgment, confrontation? Sit with that fear for a moment. Then choose differently. Say something. Anything. "I don't see this working" takes 30 seconds. It's not the conversation that's difficult. It's the feeling you're trying to avoid. Here's what I want you to carry with you. Ghosting isn't mystery. It's psychology. When someone disappears, they're not reflecting your value. They're revealing their own emotional limitations. They're showing you that they don't yet have the tools to be honest, even when honesty costs them something, and that knowledge is powerful, because it means the next time someone goes silent, you don't have to spend weeks questioning yourself. You can recognize it for what it is, someone else's inability to communicate, not your failure to deserve an explanation. You deserved honesty. The fact that they couldn't give it says nothing about you. It only says something about them.